No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Hey everyone, this is Chris.
And Lorenzo.
And welcome to our Best of Saturday series. Now that we have hundreds of episodes, we get a lot of listeners asking us where to start.
So we'll be selecting some of our most popular episodes to share each Saturday from our years of podcasting. We hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And Lorenzo, today I want to talk about some feedback that I got recently and kind of related to something. I don't want to get your thoughts on it too, because the feedback made a lot of sense. But I want to know, there's more nuance to it than I think, and I want to kind of hash it out with you. So the feedback that I got was that in a situation where I was trying to help support some people, I jumped in and just started supporting them. I've said in previous podcast episodes before that leaders who jump in and start doing the work of their people in order to show that nothing is beneath them, I think are coming from the wrong perspective. That you shouldn't necessarily do that. There are other ways to kind of give that impression. But sometimes the business of whatever you're doing shows a need, and sometimes people have to just be able to do it. And so it's important to be able to do it, just not to use it to try to kind of get within people's good graces, use it for what it's actually for. And that's what I was doing. It was this moment where there was some additional resources needed for something, and I just jumped in and started doing it. And the feedback that I got was that the right thing to do would have been to kind of just take a step back and kind of take a look at what all of the resources were that were at my disposal at the time and move resources around instead. And the feedback I got, I don't think was wrong, but the part that kind of stuck with me a little bit was, sometimes the time that it would take to get the resource, sometimes the time it would take to get the resources to help solve the problem is the same time it takes to solve the problem. And I think it's important for leaders to kind of figure out what is the right course of action. And there isn't always one right answer. Sometimes it's one thing, sometimes it's the other thing. And so I want to get your perspective on this.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I think first and foremost, it's really good feedback. As long as it's also partnered with and here's the result maybe of a negative thing that happened as a result of your actions, right? Because it is... There are definitely times and places where you should step in as a leader, and I think actually for all of us, and like my temptation is when I like to do it as well. So like if I can engage with the customer, I can jump in and sell something. Like I enjoy that. I probably shouldn't be doing it, but I also like to do it. So like I can absolutely feel that piece of it that sometimes as a leader, you can look at the nuance. You can see maybe like the stress in the team or the eyeball staring at you or like, how are we going to get out of this? And you can't help yourself but to throw on your cape and jump on in there because then it's like, yes, like this can be done. But the reason why I say it's really good feedback is because there is, and I think I wrote this in my book, but my quote is like, always allow your people the opportunity to fail, but never let them. And the reason why I say it that way is because like you want to provide chances for people to see what you're seeing, to allow there to be some kind of risk or element where it's not going as well as it could go, but also never letting them fail means like, but having enough control where it doesn't go off the rails completely. And I think in a situation like that where we look at a situation where we can just jump in, and even in our current society of quick communication, text messaging, walkie-talkies, whatever you've got, to your point, to make the call, to ask somebody to come out and help support, to go do something, you could just do it and be done with it. Even in those times, as a leader, sometimes you want to take that exact opportunity to step back and bring somebody along to see what you see, or utilize the resources that you've got at your disposal, because while it seems like this is the thing that you should be doing, there can be other parts to your business that need your attention and that only you can be the person to be doing those actual things. So I've been there. I've made that mistake. I've gotten that same kind of feedback from time to time. I have delivered that feedback sometimes because there was something definitely that went wrong, and the leader that was supposed to be watching this thing over here got caught up in something else, and so we had to have that conversation. And then other times when it was about giving the feedback, but I also had to stop myself and say, but wait, you did the right thing. You know what I mean? Like, let's not get this twisted. There's a better choice you could have made, but the choice that you made was actually the good choice because you were supporting people that needed support in the moment, and you really can't go wrong. Maybe it could have been a better a better use of resources by taking a step back. But at the end of the day, you don't want people walking away feeling like, well, I helped my team at a point of need, and that was a bad thing. Like, no, actually, that's not. That's not that's actually a good thing. But there could have been a better choice.
Sure. Well, I've always believed that if you need to jump in to show people that it's not beneath you to jump in, then you've already kind of lost. Meaning, if your people need to see that from you in order to think that that's not beneath you, then you've kind of cast the wrong light on what it means to support your people. And so I think leaders that I've seen who are really good at supporting their people, they don't get judged negatively by their people when they don't, so quote unquote, jump in and put their cape on. When they don't do that, it's not looked upon as negatively by them because the leader has made it very clear what their role is and what support is. And things can be seen, maybe not in the moment, but later on, or sometimes in the moment, can be seen about what was done to kind of solve this problem that maybe couldn't have been done by anybody else. And the more the leader kind of shows that in the day-to-day actions of why they're there and that their role as a support for their people is there, that leader gets the assumption of positive intent from their people when they're not the first person to jump in. It gets assumed, oh, there's a reason they're not jumping in. They're moving things around in the background to try to make this problem go away. And so again, I don't think that was the issue in this particular situation. I wasn't jumping in because I didn't want somebody to think, oh, that's beneath me from jumping in. It was truly a standpoint of expediency. That's all it was. It was let's put the fire out, because if I allow my people to put the fire out in this moment, then it will get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they may not know how to. Now, maybe that's a reflection on how well I've taught my people to put out fires. But that's a discussion for when the fire is not burning. You don't let the house burn down while you talk about what caused the fire. You put it out first, then you talk about what caused the fire. And so I think there's just a time and a place.
No, I think so too. And I also think that it's like in those situations, communication is critical, right? Because if you got the feedback, because you jumped in to do something.
Sure.
My guess would be that you were supposed to be doing something else, right? That's usually the cause of how you get feedback.
Right.
You were supposed to be doing A, instead you were doing B. Hey, next time you stick to A, and we'll figure something else out for B, right? So in those moments when that happens, especially when you work on teams where there's multiple leaders. So like when I spent a decade being an assistant manager in multiple stores and locations, and there's always a team of assistant managers. And so, it's that you can make a choice to go do something, but typically, especially in retail, everybody has a thing that they're supposed to be accomplishing at every hour of the day that you're responsible for, need to be keeping an eye on, or whatever the case is. So in those situations where maybe this thing is, that fire is burning a little bit and you have to step in to go put it out, one of two options, saying, hey, FYI, there's a fire. All right, I can go put it out, or is there somebody else who can come support it? And many times people would say, like, go ahead and knock it out. I'll keep an eye on things, right? And so at least at that point, when I'm stepping out of my current responsibility to go fix this thing, somebody else is aware. They have been a part of making that choice, and then they then can go ahead and pick up whatever thing I might be missing.
Sure.
But that's a key element to it. But I think something else when you're talking about the idea of like the fires and them going out, I think it ties back to a little bit of my philosophy of allowing people to fail is like the concept of controlled burns. Those are situations where, you can allow it. You want to have a little bit of roughness to whatever the situation is.
Discomfort.
Discomfort, exactly. You want people to kind of figure out, like, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix this? And for you to say, like, well, what do you think? Like, let's look at this. What do you see? Here's what I see. How can we, and so, like, while it can feel like you have to jump in right away and go put it out, if you have these situations where it is a controlled burn, where you're allowing people to learn in the moment at a process that maybe they're just starting at, or they're trying to figure themselves out, that type of situation, you let them kind of work through it. You stay close to them and you ask them how it's going, and they're like, it's out of control. And okay, well, like, let's slow it down. Why do we think it's out of control? What do you think we should do? And then as a leader, you help them to work through that fire as it's going, and then they can then go and douse it, and maybe it takes a little bit longer, and maybe it takes a little bit more effort, but it allows them to not only see it, stop and pause, consider it, but then be a part of going to fix it, and then to understanding, and then having the recap at the end of, so why did we think this happened, and what can we do in the future to prevent that from happening again? So I think that's how I look at some of those situations, is like, you want to have some elements of, you kind of want the embers burning a little bit all the time. You want to allow that to happen, because if you're in that space, then that means that you have people that are developing, they're learning, you're providing opportunities for people to take responsibility and ownership of something, when maybe they're not fully competent or confident in it yet.
Right. Well, that was my role at the time. The thing that I was supposed to be doing was making sure that people knew how to put the fire out, and it was going well. And then when, because they're in the process of learning, the fire got too big. It was like, all right, let's dial this back a little bit, and then we'll go back to learning how to put out the fire. So,
right.
The if the solution is not for the fire instructor to jump in and start putting it out, but instead call more firefighters in, then that's the solution. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I think every situation is different. But again, this is where, like you said, communication is important. It's important to make sure that people kind of understand the mindset that went into what the decision-making process was. And when it comes to your people being able to put these fires out, I think something you said all the benefits of letting them do it, they're spot on, but I think you forgot one too, and that's that being able to look back on their own ability to put it out is confidence building. Like if they were able to do it, then it's like, oh, well, this wasn't the monster that I had made up it to be in my mind. If the leader is always jumping in and helping them put the fire out, then what they get from it is, boy, I didn't know how to do this without the leader involved. And so the next time it happens, the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to call their leader in, as opposed to just saying to themselves, you know what, this is big, and it's possible it's going to get out of control, but I think I have the tools here, and so I'm going to try. And then the calling the support in becomes the plan B or plan C, as opposed to the first line of defense. And so, yeah, I think it's equally important from a standpoint of just kind of building that confidence.
Sometimes in that learning phase, when you're figuring out how to deal with fires in general, it's not fun. It can be frustrating. It can be, you can get caught up in the emotion of it. Because there's a lot of dynamics when it comes to leadership, and many times it's leading your people, leading your peers, leading your bosses, leading other people that you work with, and there's been plenty of times when I've had people or leaders say and do something that just boiled me up,
right?
And like in the moment, I kind of like held my composure. I kind of shut down a little bit. I need time to think about this. I need time to take this all in, right? And then my initial reaction is like, okay, like I got my thoughts together. I'm going to just tell them how I feel, okay? And I'm gonna lay it all out. I'm gonna build my entire case. I'm gonna dismantle everything they said, and I'm gonna make them feel like like idiots for doing that or saying that. And I get it all out, and I want to write it all down, and then you realize, well, actually, the right way to handle this is to go have the conversation,
right?
Right, and like that's not easy, right? It's not easy. To take what you're feeling or the emotion or the situation and then go and sit down with somebody and put yourself in the mindset of like, I'm going to deliver them probably some things they don't want to hear, may not be prepared to hear, or I don't know how they're going to react. I don't know how they're going to, I don't know any of these types of things. But that is a part of leadership. A part of leading is being able to navigate some of those hard times, some of those fire burns, being comfortable, to your point, like confident in that space. But you only build those things through experience and through doing it. I'll always tell people, like, the only way to make better decisions is to make decisions.
Sure.
Like, that's it. Like, sometimes they'll be really bad. Most of the time they won't be. Most of the time they'll be good because, to your point, here's the reason why I made it. And then sometimes they'll be great, but like the only way to build confidence is to make more decisions.
Right. I heard a joke once a long time ago that I thought was funny. It was a joke about a surgeon that had come into an auto mechanic place to have their car worked on, and the auto mechanic decided to come up to go to the surgeon and say, this has always kind of boiled my blood a little bit that you probably make $500,000 a year and I only make $50,000 a year, And we both do the same thing. We both open up the hood of something and figure out what's wrong and then fix it and make it work again. Why is it that you make 10 times more a year than I do? And the doctor replied with, have you ever tried to fix an engine while it was running? And I think about this in the context of what we're talking about, because the optics of what can happen when you're in the moment trying to solve these problems, possibly in full view of people who don't know all the situation, whether it be your clients or your customers. A lot of these problems where you can allow your people to have the opportunity to fail and then jump in. If your clients or your customers don't see, so to speak, how the sausage is made, then they just see the result when it's done and then they're happy. But it's messy having these learnings sometimes. And I think a lot of leaders can have the tendency to jump in instead of taking that opportunity to step back if they believe what's happening is the curtain is being lifted on the process, and that's not a good view or good optics for your clients or your customers. If it was happening behind the scenes, maybe they'd be more likely to take a step back and say, okay, let's see how this person kind of fares here, and I'll jump in at the last second if I really have to, but let's see how they can go about it. And so I thought about it the same way. It's this perspective of doing the same thing isn't always doing the same thing if you're not considering the fact that there are higher level things kind of viewing the process and things that might make it, kind of subtly different, but that those subtleties can change things drastically.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 Minute Hack.
The 1 Minute Hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 Minute Hack, here's what I want you to do. This is about building confidence in yourself to know whether the right solution to any problem is to put the fire out yourself or to have somebody else do it. And the way to do that, the only way to do that, is to involve yourself in enough fires over time to build the context of whether or not you are needed or whether you're not needed. Because at the end of the day, if you aren't needed for something and you know that your people can eventually handle it, it's important that they learn that they can, and it's important for you to set them up to be able to do that, even if it means the fire burns just a little bit longer. The more you go through this process and the more decisions you make as far as whether or not you made the right decision or not, the more likely you're going to be able to make the right decision when the next fire pops up. If you're seeing the type of fire for the very first time that you've never seen before, it's going to be very easy and very quick for you to assume that you're the only one who can put it out. But stop for a moment, take a step back, and let it go for a few minutes. Keep doing what you're supposed to be doing as a leader. Develop your people, train them, and allow them that opportunity to try to put that out. And only jump in at the last second. You'll know very quickly whether or not the next one of the same kind is something you're needed for, or whether or not they can do it.
Yeah, I think it's a great 1 minute hack, and it's a reminder. It's like you want to build your confidence and skill based on experience. So run towards the experiences. When you hear something like, oh, I've never dealt with that before, or somebody's working on something and you just so happen to either be around or, somebody asks you your opinion and you're like, I have no idea, I've never done that. Like, get involved, take the opportunity to learn, work yourself through it. Because again, as you collect these experiences through your career, they allow you to then reference them when you get into similar situations to know how to react if you need to, and how to step in if you need to, or how to allow it, to carry on, or how you can find another resource to make it happen. So yeah, I think it's a great hack, and it's a reminder that, like if things are going so easy and you're not learning anything new or seeing anything different, then maybe you're not looking hard enough, you're not involving yourself enough as a leader.
Yeah, I agree. I also think I want to make something else clear too. Anytime as a leader, if your job as a leader, if you consider that to be developing your people, training your people, making sure that you're kind of grooming the next generation of leaders, I don't want to say that every time you jump in to do it yourself, you're doing the wrong thing. But every time you jump in to do it yourself, you are saying, I'm okay with losing this opportunity to do the training and the coaching and developing. So you're saying, you know what? The moment, the fire, whatever that is large enough to where I'm okay with not having this other opportunity to train and coach and develop and groom. And so if your job as a leader is to do that, and you want to make sure if you work 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week, whatever it is, you want to fill the majority of that time with your job as a leader, training, coaching, and developing. And so while you might look at it as a victory that you put out that particular fire, you need to hold that in the context of it's also wasted time. You wasted the time that you could have used to train and coach and develop. Sometimes it's necessary to get rid of that moment and just put the fire out. but you should always try to err on the side of how can I use this as an opportunity to train and coach and develop, as opposed to how do I use this opportunity to build my own firefighting skills.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.